Okay, hi Clive. I'm really honored to talk to you today because I've watched your videos for a while, and my parents actually used to buy some supplements I remember from the Ancient Purities online shop. But you know what it is that captures the attention of anyone who listens to you. It's actually that wonderful, gentle yet rich baritone English accent. And I think you're just, such a master of the healing process. And you really do deserve massive recognition for just the wisdom in your approach with things. And people like you are, I think, very destined to heal and, uplift the planet. And personally, I think you are rather a genius because I read that you started off as a pioneer of high-tech neurosurgical and optical instruments and founded the largest contact lens company. So it's just astonishing. So let's start by, would you like to just give the listeners a brief history of your journey?
Well, thank you very much, Tiana. Great pleasure to be with you. Um, Very briefly, there are a few highlights that stand out. When I was 11, I was in the Caribbean and we had a bucket with a glass bottom on it, and two of us were on a little dinghy and we could see the fish crystal clear. When the person with me held his fishing rod, he caught fish immediately.
Mm.
When I held my fishing rod, I caught nothing. They weren't interested in my bait. When we swapped fishing rods, the fish immediately switched and went for him. So what was the difference between him and me on that day? He caught 20 fish, I caught zero. The difference was I didn't want to catch fish. I didn't want to because I'd hated putting the worm on the hook, and I really didn't want to take a hook out of a fish's mouth. And they knew it. The fish absolutely knew it. And they literally sacrificed themselves to my friend and left me quietly alone.
Oh
So
my
that was
God.
quite, it woke me up a bit.
That's
Then,
amazing.
when I was about 15, I found myself floating on the ceiling, looking down at my body, and I realized that I wasn't my body.
Mm.
And at the moment I came out of my body and I was floating on the ceiling, suddenly all the worries and the cares of life vanished in a microsecond,
Mm.
and I was like in nirvana. It was just perfect. And not only that, but I was still me going, wow, I'm on the ceiling. It was
Amazing.
fantastic. And so I had sort of various adventures in my life. I was looking for some, I thought about being a doctor when I was at school, but that looked horrendous. And so I did a number of entrepreneurial things. I used to go to Japan a lot and did some work with the Japanese. And then I sort of stumbled into the sort of world of neurosurgery a bit. I'd
Right.
already been in ophthalmic optics. And I started sitting in on brain operations because I was selling some special microscopes for brain surgeons.
And
And that,
how old were you at the time?
oh, about 30, I suppose, then, in
Wow.
that period.
Amazing.
And I had an organic farm for a while,
Mm.
for about 10 years. And we had at one point we had 16 volunteers working on the farm. They got fed and we had a nice time and stuff. And then I teamed up with some people and we started a lie detector company.
Oh,
I
wow.
was I was quite
So
interested
interesting.
in that. And in when I was doing that, I got in touch with the most famous lie detector person in America, and he was probably 80 or something at that point. And he told me that one day he wondered if he could make a plant, you know,
Mm.
react with a lie detector. So he's got a big rubber plant in his office, and he wires it up, switches the machine on, and he's thinking, I wonder what would happen if I cut a leaf off when the plant responded.
Right.
Then he went on from there to do all sorts of experiments. He wondered what exactly was going on.
Mm.
So he did an experiment at 3 in the morning. He had a little robot arm pour boiling water onto some live shrimps. And at the exact second that the shrimps got boiled, the plant went mental.
Oh my
He
gosh.
then started doing other experiments. He got a pot of live yogurt, split it into two, put the probes into one pot of yogurt, stirred strawberry jam into the other one in another room, and the yogurt responds. So he's basically the first person to prove, I think, that everything is one.
Amazing. Amazing. And what an unconventional approach
Yeah.
to his experiments. That's amazing.
He wrote a book called Primary Perception. His name is Cleve Baxter. Primary Perception. Really interesting book, and he sent me a copy, and I must have lent it to somebody. I looked on Amazon to see how much they were, and the only one there was $500. I wish
Oh
I
my.
could remember who I lent it to.
So it's like become a collector's item now.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
I've had quite an interesting life, and then I sold my contact lens company, and suddenly had a bundle of money, and I thought, well, what shall I do? And I wanted to change the world. I've always had um, ideas that the world could be so much better and it would be so easy and so cheap and that sort of thing. When I was 10, I met John Lennon, and that made a massive
God.
impression on me. I met him in 1964. And so I believed everything he said. I believed there was going to be a revolution in 67
Hmm.
and we, the people, would win. Never crossed my mind that it wouldn't happen
Right.
until it didn't. Uh, but then I thought, okay, well, I've got the money to do whatever I like, more or less, for a while. And so I decided that there was no hope of nobody was, I was coming out with world-changing ideas, I felt, but nobody was interested. Nobody was interested. However, I suddenly realized that actually the way in is health, because I was looking around me and everybody was ill. I
Hmm.
mean, more or less everybody. And what is it in America? It's like 65% of everybody's on drugs, from the doctors. Imagine we're in Africa and uh, all the gazelles are ill. Right? Suddenly, 50% of all the gazelles are ill and the giraffes are ill. Well, what would you think might be wrong? Well, if they're in a zoo, the first thing you'd be looking at is, well, is it what they're eating? Is,
Right.
is that why all the animals are ill? You're feeding them rubbish, and that's what's happening, obviously, in the human
Absolutely.
world. So, um, but prior to me having this realization, I took an antibiotic. That this was in the early 80s, and one antibiotic, and suddenly there's something wrong with my eyesight, and then I become type 1 diabetic. Then I become arthritic to the stage where I had to give up driving my car, I had to give up going upstairs, and then one day I can't get out of bed. I literally don't have the strength to get dressed or anything. And they put me in hospital, and I'm in hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they say, we don't know what's wrong with you. And I wouldn't take any drugs, which was the only thing they could offer, because my response was, look, I'm not low on a drug,
Hmm.
might be low on something, but it's not drugs.
Right.
So they gave up on me, so I gave up on them, and I started taking every mineral and vitamin I could think of, and I got good advice, and I got better. All the arthritis went away. I'm still type 1 diabetic, but type 2 diabetes, you can cure that in a month,
Really.
basically. It's a dietary thing, just like fibromyalgia is
Right.
not some disease you catch, magically in the air.
Hmm.
If you're low on selenium, for instance, one mineral, selenium, you can have all the symptoms of fibromyalgia.
Right.
Let me give you another shocker. Um, Doctors spend 4 hours in their 5 year training on health, generally, as a rule. 4 hours on nutrition, right?
Hmm.
They know nothing. Then, let's say, just take one vitamin, B12, right? Now, vegans are traditionally low on B12 because that B12, generally speaking, comes from animal products.
Hmm.
So, what are the symptoms of B12 deficiency after it's been a long time, it's gone a long way, okay? The symptoms of B12 deficiency can mimic dementia, mimic it.
Oh my God.
B12 deficiency can mimic Parkinson's. B12
No
deficiency
way.
can mimic multiple sclerosis. And because doctors aren't taught about nutrition, they don't bother to ask the patient, what are you eating, and
Hmm.
figure out what you're doing wrong. They've only got 8 minutes or something. I mean, anyway, so about 12 years ago or something like that, I started a supplement company with the idea of everybody's low on virtually everything.
Hmm.
So now, that was the one you mentioned earlier. I haven't run that for many years. Now I've got my own, much smaller company in a way, but I've cut down the number of things I sell. We were selling over 100 products before. Now I'm selling basically about 10 products, one or two variations of vitamin C, which is one of the products. I've got about four different types for different reasons. But I've now realised that it's so much simpler than health is so much simpler than I thought it was.
Right.
And so what I've discovered is that basically, you know, in the old days, I knew that if you had muscle cramps or heart arrhythmia or constipation or anxiety, worry, panic attacks, heart attacks, sleeping badly,
Mhm.
muscle aches, cramps, twitches, chances were that you had a magnesium deficiency, right? And
Right.
I'm right about that. But I was suggesting to people they take two magnesiums a day,
Mhm.
maybe at a pinch four. But then I realised that that's just not working. Well, it does work, but it's too slow. So now I recommend to, in many cases, to take, let's say two is the dose you might want to take. Too much gives you diarrhea, so let's say
Mm.
two capsules. Take 12 in a day, 12. And I've had people who are suicidal within 36 hours, no longer suicidal
My
because they
goodness.
took 24 magnesiums. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount.
Amazing.
And I've had people who haven't slept for years. Suddenly, after 12 that night, they're sleeping. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it's when you take the right amount,
Mhm.
things happen fast because we're self-repairing.
Right.
Most of us are held back through a lack of B12 or whatever it might be. So I
Mhm.
found with vitamin C, iodine, charcoal, vitamin D, amino acids, selenium, zinc. That's pretty much everything on the website. I
Mhm.
found you get the dosage of that right, and everybody's different. Um, Suddenly, things can happen in a day. I've given somebody a massive dose of amino acids, and they'd been an alcoholic for years. They explained to me when they came around to see me that they don't really need to eat because 4 bottles of white wine were all the calories they needed. But he was dying, quite honestly. Within 2 days taking amino acids, he was off the alcohol. Huge doses I gave him.
Amazing.
And it's not, again, everything like this. I'm not giving medical advice, and it's not going to happen to everybody the way I'm describing. But it's so interesting to realize that so many people have been suffering, for years and years and years, decades, and they can feel better the next day when they get it right. I mean, that doesn't always happen,
Mhm.
but in so many cases it does. It's quite remarkable.
That's amazing. And that's why, all of this is why I wanted to start by mentioning um, in this discussion about, I'm sure you've heard of him, Clive. He's called Dr. Westerner Price. He
Oh,
was
yeah,
the
well, yes,
he's the
Dr. Price, an absolute genius. I'm
absolutely.
really sorry, but I've got to do something very quickly.
Okay, go on.
I'll be back.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so I did want to mention about him, about Dr. Westerner Price, because I just find, he has been called the Isaac Newton of nutrition, right? And when he was actually searching for the causes of dental decay and physical degeneration, and I'm talking about the ones that he observed daily, right, in his dental practice. So he went on a mission, I'm pretty sure you're aware of all this, but just for the viewers, he went on a mission to study people with fine teeth and the isolated primitives, if you will. But his research repeatedly kept showing that it's modern denatured food which is the major cause of these degenerative diseases and the overall poor health of our society. And he observed that there was an almost complete absence of tooth decay and just dental deformities among Native Americans who lived, as their ancestors did. And the reason was simple. It's because our modern food, like you said, and diet lacks the bioavailable vitamins that our bodies are designed to need. And so 70 years ago, Dr. Price, he even documented soil depletion and how it negatively affects the health of animals and humans. And he basically just showed the world how to heal cavities with nutrition because he was I think it started with him just being very disturbed by what he found when he looked into the mouths of his patients and rarely did an examination of I think an adult patient reveal anything but rampant tooth decay. So, which was often actually accompanied by serious health problems in the body, like, arthritis, osteoporosis, diabetes, intestinal complaints, and, chronic fatigue. But this is why, he was also very concerned about the dentition of younger patients. And he noticed that crowded and crooked teeth were becoming more and more common. So, and such children also suffered from, a few complaints of frequent infections and things like allergies and anemia, asthma. So it was just, it's amazing that, he really paved the way to a very unique idea. And he traveled to various isolated parts of the world, by the way, to do this research where the inhabitants had no contact with civilization. And he actually spent that time studying their health and their physical development. And he studied, traditional Eskimos, Indian tribes in Canada, um, the Florida Everglades, and then what else? Like the South Sea Islanders, but just basically just these primitive cultures and the Amazonian and tribes in Africa. So he went to quite a few places, but his theories about diet and nutrition have been analyzed, obviously, with modern day doctors, and they've criticized him predominantly, but because of his advocacy for this controversial diet, which is quite rich in meat and raw dairy and animal fat. But Clive, I found it very interesting in my research that when he visited all these isolated regions, he actually found that the tribes and the villages where virtually everyone exhibited just genuine physical perfection, honestly, and they were extremely healthy basically, and tooth decay and things like just dental crowding, they were non-existent. So he just took tons of photographs and everyone was smiling in them, and it's just this almost complete absence of disease. And even though they're living in physical environments that were extremely harsh and probably very unhygienic. And after that, I think he took his samples right back with him to Cleveland, and he studied them in his laboratory, and he found that it's in these native diets, like you mentioned, about the vitamins. They contained at least 4 times the minerals and water soluble vitamins like vitamin C and B complex. And what was the other thing? I think he also discovered that the diets of healthy native groups contained at least 10 times more vitamin A and vitamin D than the American diet of his day. So you can imagine how deficient today's society is, right?
Well, this is absolutely true. I mean, even the American government, I think it was 1933, the Department of Agriculture put out a report saying there was no longer sufficient nutrition in the soil to support a healthy human being. That was 100 years ago, virtually, or 90 something years ago. So, of course, Weston Price, because there wasn't so much knowledge about vitamins at that point,
Mhm.
he also identified factor X, didn't he?
Yes.
He didn't know what factor X was, but
Right.
he knew there was something that he hadn't figured out. What was the connection between healthy teeth really?
Right.
And of course, it was grass-fed animal products, and
Exactly.
that was what it was. And
Exactly.
vegans are partaking of a hugely exciting experiment because nobody's done it in the world ever,
So
and I
true.
don't think we're meant to be vegan. I mean, there's so many interesting arguments. I mean, most vegans that I speak to, for instance, I say, "Why are you a vegan?" Now, and I speak from having not eaten meat for 25 years. I eat meat now, but I
Mhm.
didn't for 25 years. Anyway, what most of them say, obviously, is, "Well, I don't like commercial agriculture and the way the animals are
Right.
treated." And so on. And as an ex-organic farmer, I had a cow. I completely agree with them. It's horrendous. They're feeding the cows food that cows shouldn't eat,
Right.
genetically modified half the time, most of the time, and keeping them in unsanitary conditions and drugging them and doing a whole host of things. So that's clearly awful. However, looking at it the other way, cows and goats and sheep and the ruminants can graze on land where you could never grow crops.
Mhm.
Right? So, um, on that level, when they're being kept naturally and just left to get on with it, I mean, cows uh, are great for the environment. There isn't, if they're not overcrowded,
Hmm.
and wolves and things balance everything out. So, as was, think of the millions of buffalo that used to roam the plains in America. Uncounted millions, right? And they
Right.
killed every single one virtually. Almost every single one.
Yeah.
And I think it was Custer or somebody who said every dead buffalo is a dead Indian.
Wow.
And so, okay, so you want to save the planet by not killing life forms. We've already discussed that, actually, yogurt has consciousness, everything has consciousness. So, okay, you take a field, you can put a couple of cows on it, um, or you could plough it. Now, one cow, you might say, feeds one person for 1 year, roughly, okay? One death. Plough the field, billions of deaths. Billions, because you've destroyed the fungal net, you've killed the worms and the insects and the bugs, and
Right.
bacterial life is destroyed. It's a disaster. And it might take hundreds of years to come back from one ploughing, let alone putting artificial chemicals on it and so on, herbicides and what have you.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
the actual destruction of a vegan who thinks they're doing good, I would say, is way more than sensible, you know, yeah, sensible agriculturists, you and I, who love animals, would do it.
Right.
So I think vegans need to rethink, particularly where are they getting their taurine? Taurus the bull. Where are they getting their taurine? Eyesight, super important. Taurine.
Hmm.
Where are they getting um, the K2? Vitamin K2
Right.
uh, is absolutely crucial, and you can only get it again really from animal
Mhm.
products or maybe
Yeah.
um, uh, actually, I need to correct myself on B12. You can get B12 through fermentation of vegetables,
Okay.
and you can get vegan B12 supplements. Any vegan who wants to do it, they need to make sure they're getting the right type of natural vitamin K2. They want to make sure they're filling those gaps, otherwise they're lining themselves up for problems.
Right.
That's my feeling.
I mean, we all know that veganism is often presented as the solution to environmental health and animal welfare problems, like you said. But is it? I mean,
Well, Bill Gates and the governments of the whole world are promoting veganism, right?
mm,
The Impossible Burger and all that.
right.
Bill Gates says, the whole world must stop eating meat. So when those people are saying it, it's untrue.
Something sinister going on. I mean, the anti animal agriculture narrative and plant based diet agenda combines political ideology and commercial interests, right? So this whole movement is quite insidious and unsavory, honestly, and can't shouldn't be ignored by those who actually value liberty and consumer choice, right? This is I'm not attacking vegans at all. This is actually attack on the mainstream narrative and the hidden ulterior motive of the elite, like you said, Bill Gates, to control the global food supply. And central to this anti-animal agriculture narrative is climate change. And the accusation that cattle are a leading cause of anthropogenic climate change is perhaps the most absurd concept of the global warming theory. But
Yep.
nevertheless, they do push it, and this is the charge of being laid against livestock agriculture. So we've got veganism and vegetarianism as really just a part of Agenda 21 propaganda. And I mean, those of us who've done our research and know what's happening in the world, I mean, the main purpose is to eventually reduce and control the Earth's population, and unhealthy people are, I mean, factually, this isn't even an opinion, they are easier to control. And a low fat diet without animal products can cause malfunctions in your brain and your body. So the propaganda is really just all about making people move to satellite cities and smart cities to take away more human rights, raise taxation. There's always something more sinister behind it all.
Well, quite. I mean, look at all the people with Alzheimer's and dementias. They believed the lie that a low-fat diet was important when they forgot to educate them that your brain is made of cholesterol.
Exactly.
I mean,
So
it's just so
true.
sad.
It's so sad.
I mean, the other thing about cows, supposedly creating all this methane and so on. So you've got a lighted match. Where would you rather be, at the back end of a cow or at the back end of a lorry? Who's polluting more? Is it the cow or is it the lorry? It's obvious.
Right.
Um, so, So, the whole cow thing really fascinates me because you ask any child what do cows eat. Well, actually, a cow would normally eat the leaves of trees and the herbs and the wildflowers and the mushrooms. And the idea that cows eat grass is like you eating broccoli for the rest of your life and nothing else. It's absurd, really. So now they've genetically modified basically the cows to such a degree, hybridization, that particularly the black and white cows are the Holsteins, those ones where the whole udders are way too swollen to look healthy.
Hmm.
They're producing a type of milk which is so far away from
So true.
what we thought of as milk 100 years ago. It's poisonous at this point.
Absolutely.
Milk, cream, when I was young, milk and cream were a yellowy color.
Mm.
If you'd been given white milk, you would have said, well, this must be paint. It's obviously not milk. It's the wrong color. And a bottle of milk had a big thick layer of cream on the top. Now,
Right.
now you have to buy it in cream pots.
Absolutely.
The word cream meant the best. The fat of the land meant the best you could get. And they demonized the whole thing. And so, what is the biggest killer out there apart from stress? One of the big contributory factors is cooking oils. In 1850, the statistics were that 3 people died of heart attacks in the city of Boston in 1850, and nobody died of cancer. The next year, they introduced cotton oil as a cooking oil, and the deaths went up. And each time they brought out another, they found a way to crush sunflower seeds into sunflower oil with pressure and heat, which destroyed any health properties and again made it poisonous. So most of the vegetable oils, nut oils, seed oils that are on the shelf in the supermarkets actually are harmful. I mean, when I was young, rapeseed oil,
Mm.
everybody knew that rapeseed was only good for oiling machinery. Nobody in their right mind would eat the stuff.
Gosh.
And in one generation, 2 generations, that it's just lost. And now people think it's healthy. In the tofu industry, after they'd manufactured the tofu, they'd throw away the yuck that was left over.
Mm.
But now they call it soya milk.
Oh, right.
Um,
Oh, gosh.
I,
Soy
I
milk.
may be wrong
Oh.
about that, but it's about that way.
Mhm.
None of the Southeast Asians ever ate unfermented soya.
Right. So
And
true.
then there's hemp seeds, right? Now, hemp seeds, when you've taken the shell off, whole hemp seeds taste great. You could
Mm.
add them to anything you like. I just eat them off the spoon. Fantastic, healthy, lovely. But of course, some people want to crush the oil out of the hemp seeds, right? So you crush all the oil out and then you throw the hemp seed stuff away, right? No, you don't. You sell it as hemp protein to idiots who are willing to buy it.
Wow. There's just so much manipulation, honestly. And you mentioned the activator X, which is the fat soluble vitamin K2, right? Um, and people don't put a lot of emphasis on vitamin K2, Clive. Like it's actually related to fertility and it occurs primarily in butter, doesn't it? When the cows eat rapidly growing green grass.
Absolutely right. And without K2, you can get all the
Mm.
osteoporosis, that sort of thing, where your bones disintegrate. Because it's about building healthy bones and teeth, along with magnesium and so on.
Of
But
course.
if you haven't got enough K2, it can be an absolute disaster. And yes, it's a very under talked about.
Hmm. And
Uh,
to really get it inside your system, you've just got to add high quality grass fed raw milk to your diet. And after people started doing this, their cavities actually stopped. And that's what Dr. Weston and Price observed, that some people had saw new tooth structure building when they started adopting these things in their diet. And so the power of raw milk or butter to stop cavities comes from the fertility factor, which was present during, certain times of the year. But Dr. Price actually suggests eating about 1 tablespoon or more of high quality butter per day without this substance is the body just doesn't have the, how do you put it, like the activating messages to the hormonal system to build healthy teeth and bones. And where I come from, Clive, in South Asian cultures, um we use ghee a lot, right? And ghee comes from a cow and it's considered a sacred food for pregnancy and breastfeeding when growing children. And it's precisely this vitamin K2 component that actually assures, healthy everything, really. But definitely assures bright, white, healthy teeth.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning the book, Sally Fallon's book,
Oh,
Nourishing
yes,
Traditions,
absolutely.
where
I was going to
it's
talk about her as well.
a fantastic book. I mean, the book part is great and the recipes are great.
Hmm.
Anybody interested in Western Price, I would recommend Sally Fallon's book, Nourishing Traditions. It really is quite
Absolutely.
exceptional. Yeah.
I saw Sally Fallon's books. They were always lying around the house growing up. And my mother actually used her book, the one that you mentioned, the Nourishing Traditions. I think there's one for the baby specifically. And my mother used it to when my younger sister was born, because she was very premature and she was extremely malnourished. So basically, what my mom did was she made her own baby formula using her book, and it had things like raw goat's milk, just cream, bone broth, lots of different strains of probiotics, cod liver oil, and even actually a small fraction of raw organic liver. So it sounds disgusting, but my sister thrived, Clive, and became so plump and just such a happy child. And her health improved so much that the Western Enterprise Journal actually did an article on her with before and after pictures. But, this people these days just don't understand that we need saturated fat for the brain, especially for the brain, the heart, the kidneys, the lungs, even, and, for just proper hormone production and protection against inflammation. And in fact, it's for every cell to work in our body, we need fats. And because that's what our cell membranes are made of, right? And our bodies can't really function without saturated fat. And we get these important fatty acids, which really just support everything from brain function to gut integrity to healthy skin, exclusively from animal fats. So, it's really sad that this has been taken out of the Western diet, and critical vitamins like vitamin A, D, and K2 that uniquely occur in animal fats. Western civilization is completely just is woefully deficient in these nutrients. It's actually quite very unfortunate what's happening.
The good news is you can reverse most conditions. I mean, about when I woke up to the brain is made of cholesterol idea, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. I was going around the country giving talks at that point, and I was saying to people, look, if you've got a relative with Alzheimer's, for
Mhm.
instance, give them saturated fat. And at that point, I was saying, why don't you give them 6 tablespoonfuls of coconut oil, daily? And about 12 weeks later, this woman rings up, said she was in the talk, and she'd reversed 2 years of Alzheimer's using 4 tablespoonfuls of coconut oil. And I said, well, explain. How do you know it's 2 years? She said, well, 2 years ago, I had to give up talking to my mum on the phone because it was a waste of time. Totally impossible. Now, 4 tablespoonfuls of coconut oil later for 12 weeks, speaking on the phone as she had done previously.
That's incredible.
So, there
Goes
are
to
a couple
show.
of examples like that. So I'm always interested in the proof. Okay,
Mm,
prove it to me. Anti-aging, prove it to me. Well, one of the interesting ones for that, the Russians have been developing and working with peptides,
mm.
animal-derived peptides, for ages. And with the one for ovaries, many, many women who've had 2 years into menopause have started their periods again, which I would contend you could relate that to reversing aging by 2 years.
Wow, that's true. That's an incredible way to look at it. Gosh, that actually happened.
Yeah, it's worth looking at the Russian peptide
Oh my goodness. I
development.
will. I'm writing this down.
There's a Professor Kavinson. It was part of the secret soldier program in Russia. The Russians. I mean, how the peptide study started was the Russian spies had found out that the Americans had a blinding laser, and if they flashed it from a B-52,
Mm.
everybody had their eyes open, would be blinded on the battlefield, and they
That's
they witnessed a
fascinating.
very very serious threat. So, money no object, Russian military.
Mm.
I think they got, I don't know, 100 scientists. I don't know how many scientists um, working on how to reverse retinal damage.
Mhm.
How can you do it? And they find that by taking cells from animals' eyes, they could grow protein as amino acids and peptides. So they took the peptides and they found that people were getting better and their eyesight was improving. And now there are Russian clinics who say that they can uh, restore 80% of eyesight in 80% of patients. And what they're doing is they're using microcurrents, and the
Right.
Russians were really near the front of all the microcurrent development. Yeah, very, very tiny current. Um, and they're using all sorts of technologies.
Mhm.
There's so much happening, it's interesting. Um, so there's a lot that can be done in almost every field. And, for about 12 years, I used a Russian frequency device, small thing. In England, they tend to call it a pain genie.
Okay.
And I was getting incredible results. I mean, generally speaking, I would say, well, I can probably get you out of pain 8 out of 10 times. 8 out of 10 times, probably either reduce the pain to zero or make it much, much better with a small Russian device, 10 minutes. And it doesn't matter whether the pain was in your foot. Um, you could just use it on the arm and it would affect the foot.
Oh
It
my
was,
gosh.
yeah, pain genie, interesting. So, but now I've gone back. I've gone back in time, and I'm using frequency devices made from much earlier.
Hmm.
There's somebody called Royal Raymond Rife who was using frequency devices in the 30s with incredible effects. But I've gone back further than that, um, and the technology I'm using actually dates back to 1891, right, when Tesla first
Right.
spoke
So
about it.
can you imagine how much suppressed technology there can be that we don't even know of?
Well, they don't even have to suppress it because everybody assumes that something invented in 1891 cannot be nearly as good as something this year, right?
It's so true. That's the way
That,
people think. Yeah.
yeah. And normally they'll probably be right. But there are a few situations where actually the technology was really good. I mean, look
Mm.
at what Tesla did. He essentially invented the electric light system as we know it now.
Right.
He worked with Edison.
Hmm.
I went to Edison's laboratory years ago,
Hmm.
Fort Myers in Florida, and all the original prototype light bulbs in Edison's lab are still burning now. They've never been switched off because
Right.
they always lasted forever. But he realized that if he made them last 1,000 hours, that he'd have business for life. If he made a
Wow.
permanent light bulb, you know, people would never replace them. So he deliberately made them to fail. He could have made them to still be burning today in your house. You
Hmm.
inherited it from your great 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 grandmother.
Right.
But of course, that doesn't suit psychopathic businessmen.
Yep. It's not, doesn't suit the vested powers with, but what do you say, Clive, to modern food nutritionists these days who, everyone advocates for so many different types of diets these days. You've got the paleo, I don't even know, there's so many names for so many different kinds, but I've talked to a lot of food nutritionists, and they always assure us that we can enjoy the superb health of the American Indians by eating low fat foods and canned fruits. Canned fruits is a big thing. And this is such a great disservice to the public, but the basis of the Indian diet was guts and grease, not waffles and skimmed milk, right? But when the Indians abandoned these traditional foods and began consuming processed store-bought foods, we saw their health deteriorated rapidly. It's really sad, Clive, that modern man has lost his taste for the kinds of foods that Indians ate. Like, how many American children will eat raw liver now, or like even dried lung, or the certain foods that they used to eat? How do we plan to return to the kind of good health the Indians enjoyed?
Well, I wonder what's really going on in the world right now. Is it that the planet, so annoyed by the humans who are really making a terrible mess of things, might have decided that really the best thing is that, I mean, it's not every human, it's just the stupid ones.
Mm.
And maybe the planet's decided to give them a sort of like an opt-out. If they're so unintelligent that they're not willing to examine for themselves whether some medical procedure is safe or not, maybe the planet has just decided, well, okay, maybe we can do without those people.
Especially in the age of information, there's really no excuse, is there?
Well, not really. So maybe it's the planet's way of sorting things out a bit. I mean, it sounds a bit harsh, but
It makes sense. It really does. And, this really is the survival of the fittest in the age of information. This is what it looks like. And it's just amazing. I mean, it's everything we're talking about right now is quite counterintuitive, I know, but, because for years, these medical fascists and the mockingbird media have told us all our lives that fat is bad and the food pyramid with grains as the main staple of human diet is the best for you. And you were talking about Sally Fallon, and you know, honestly, Clive, she's her books are revolutionary. So, I mean, the things that she talks about, and honestly, just I think everyone should go buy her book because, she's got, especially if you're pregnant, especially if I think you have children, because children need animal fats for normal growth and for their brains. And, when you go to the doctor, when you have a 2-year-old, doctors actually warn moms not to give saturated fats to their toddlers. And whole milk is actually forbidden in school lunches. And, despite constant real science showing that children on low fat diets are more likely to suffer from allergies, from asthma, and things like that. But, in typical fashion, it's the low fat diet that is now being promoted as a healthy diet, and, especially being promoted for children, Clive. It's ridiculous. And it's really sad. It's the medical industrial complex of, tells us to do the exact opposite. Like, for example, they've bombarded our mind with telling us to eat. Like growing up, I was always taught that, you have to eat several times a day, like constantly keep snacking. Like they always tell you to do that. But when indeed, fasting is what's good for your health, right? So it's everything is the opposite. Everything's backwards, everything's upside down. And, it's just children are being starved of nutrition. And
I think
yeah.
we basically assume that everything that we're taught at school is wrong.
Mm,
Pretty much everything. I mean, um, let me pose a couple of things to you. You know, maybe 10 days in a month, you can see the moon and the sun in the sky at the same time,
mhm,
right? So it's not like there's the planet in the way. There they both are, either end of the sky. Now, normally, if I held a ball, moon model in one hand, and here's the sun model,
mm,
obviously, if the sun were lighting up the moon, it would be a full moon all the time, all those 10 days. But
true.
you see it go through a cycle. But if you look every day when there's a clear sky, you can see the sun and the moon. There's nothing in the way, yet a shadow appears to be going across the moon. So how do you explain
Mm,
that? My
interesting.
explanation is that the moon is self-illuminating.
So, okay. And also, I've also seen how the moon is sometimes see through. Have you noticed that?
I've seen it on videos and never really noticed myself, but I was going to buy the new Nikon 1000 camera, which has an optical zoom of 125 times.
Oh, wow.
So there are many videos about it.
Mhm,
It's called Nikon Coolpix 1000 or something. And so they're fully zoomed out. You're looking at, say, a boat on the horizon. Okay.
mhm.
And as you zoom out, you realize it's not the horizon, it's perspective, because partway through the zoom, the boat has apparently dipped below the horizon.
Right.
You can zoom out. So um, what I'm trying to say is there are some weird anomalies. What people think when a boat goes over the horizon, that it's gone over the horizon, but actually with the camera you can zoom. It hasn't gone over the horizon; it's still there.
So it's not really the curvature.
It's not
Is
the
that
curvature.
right?
So I got a friend who's an airline pilot. I said, "Do you take account of the curvature when you're flying?" No. Boat captains, do you take account of the curvature when you're navigating? No.
Wow.
We're really hurtling around the universe. Why is the North Star always in the same place? We're hurtling
Mm,
around the
true.
universe. Why are the stars always in the same place? What's really going on? So imagine now you've got one of those NASA pictures of the world, right,
Mhm.
from space. Now, what if, with one of these cameras, you zoomed in? There's Australia at the bottom. What if one of these cameras, you zoomed in from space at Australia? Everybody would be upside down.
Right. That's true.
Why have
Oh
we
my
never seen
gosh.
that?
So much to think about. But also, Clive, if you dig, okay, this probably won't even make sense as a question, but say we're on the surface of the earth standing this way right now. If we dig to the core of the earth, actually, if we try to come out the other way, do we come out upside down, or are we still facing the right way up? Because if gravity exists, it would mean we'd come out upside down, right? But that, I mean, there's no way to prove that. So that's probably a silly question.
But I mean,
Another,
everything we've ever been taught is basically wrong. You know, so they've told us all these facts, and everybody believes what they're taught at school,
Mm,
basically. And I think everybody needs to question everything.
yeah, absolutely. I think, it's the indoctrination that children are going through now, especially these days. It's mass producing social activists in school. That's all it's about. It's all about, it's just media propaganda, and children are very receptive to it now. And critical thinking is almost, it feels like a myth to talk about these days, but what can you do? It's also the food you eat, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
Well, it's
It's
exactly
everything.
that. It's unfortunately poor people eat cheap food, and generally speaking, cheap food
True.
is processed wheat and
Hmm.
sugar. When I was young, Uh, I, I don't know anybody ever who had a problem with wheat. Gluten was relatively
Right.
unheard of. It's when they hybridized wheat,
Hmm.
and made the dwarf wheat. They won a Nobel Prize for that. They took it so far away from natural wheat, changing the genetic structure completely, that it made people ill, whereas previously everybody could eat wheat. Then gluten, the glyphosate herbicide, Monsanto's Roundup, it appears, is mainly in the gluten. So people think they're
Right.
going gluten free, where nobody ever had a problem with gluten before, mainly.
Right.
But it's the Roundup problem, it's the glyphosate. So if somebody's eating food that is poisoned with
Hmm.
glyphosate, what can you do? Well,
True.
I would say the number one answer is to use soil based minerals
Okay.
to neutralize it. So, soil based minerals, every soil everywhere has got fulvic and humic substances in it.
Hmm.
Every soil everywhere. And there are a few places around the world where there's huge concentrations of fulvic minerals.
Right.
And I discovered about fulvic minerals. Most agriculturalists know about it because it's great for the soil.
Hmm.
It neutralizes toxins. You know, poisons in the soil, fulvic minerals can neutralize. Poisons in you, fulvic minerals can neutralize. So it neutralizes glyphosate, neutralizes Roundup, and it's probably, along with vitamin C and maybe charcoal, the most powerful of the detoxification agents out there. And it's super cheap, something like $10 a month or something. So
Hmm.
it's very cheap. And most effective. I would say almost everybody is low on these key elements,
Hmm.
iodine, vitamin C, vitamin D, selenium, amino acids maybe, um, and fulvic minerals, magnesium. Those are the primaries that most people, if they just took the right doses of those, probably their life would be transformed, or they'd get
Absolutely.
another 10 years of life or something.
And
They
you were
wouldn't
talking
need.
about cholesterol a little bit. I just want to go back to that. Um, I don't really personally believe that eating fat raises our cholesterol, but do you think it's ever occurred to people that the reason the mainstream medicine places so much attention on total blood cholesterol levels is because cholesterol lowering drugs are actually the most financially profitable drugs in history? And, mainstream allopathic medicine is very skilled at using propaganda, like we said. And it's all propaganda. That is exactly how to describe the fear inducing drug ads on TV. Like, honestly, Clive, everyone keeps talking about cholesterol. You've got people my age and younger than me talking about cholesterol, like teenagers talking about cholesterol. And it's the fraudulent research studies that are funded by these drug cartels, and the billions that are spent on doctors that just love prescribing pills. Honestly, Clive, when I went to the NHS for when I told them that I had fibro, they actually wanted to prescribe me antidepressants, and really tried to convince me for a long while that's what I needed. And it was my depression is what was causing my chronic pain, but I wasn't even depressed. So it's just, honestly, mainstream medicine is a catastrophe. And this cholesterol parade is the most prevalent propaganda push that has ever existed. And when you ask people why they think cholesterol is bad, they either don't know anything about it or they just parrot what they heard on television or just, a peer reviewed article by Big Pharma. But the truth is, every single cell in our body is made from cholesterol and it increases so many things. Oh my God, cell membrane. And it's actually essential for myelin sheath development. So, and not only that, actually, what am I forgetting? It's an antioxidant. Wait, what am I saying? It's actually, yeah, it's a free radical scavenger. That's what I read about it. And most people these days don't even know this, but your body's ability to synthesize vitamin D is actually dependent on cholesterol, right? And it's necessary for the production of bile even. So your immune system needs cholesterol. People need to stop, parroting these things that they hear, because cholesterol repairs damaged cells, and this is why LDL levels will tend to sometimes go up even after dental procedures and surgery. So whenever you damage or destroy cells of your body, you need cholesterol, and cholesterol is actually transported from the liver to do the repair work. And the same thing happens when your cells are damaged after consuming trans fats and refined sugars and processed foods and neurotoxic substances like mercury and fluoride. So that's it, really. I just think, your body increases its production of cholesterol in order to repair damaged cells. And this is just one scenario that will contribute to the elevation of cholesterol now, And, in essence, the body is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's just cholesterol is actually a response to inflammation and not a cause of it, right?
I 100% agree. I mean, the body never goes wrong.
Mm,
It just adapts to whatever situation it's presented with. The body is adaptive and self-repairing. Let me take you back to teeth for a minute.
mhm,
So let's say that you wake up one morning, you've had perfect teeth all your life, and you wake up one morning and you realize you've got a little cavity because it hurts. You got pain for the first time. Okay, so let's say it wasn't a tooth, let's say it was your finger. You
mm,
cut your finger, you know exactly what to do. You don't rub food in it like you might by eating something. You don't pour hot liquids in there or something. You just keep it sterile, leave it alone, and if you're healthy by tomorrow, it's probably better.
mhm,
Right? If you're unwell, it might take longer. So let's say it's your fingernail. You break a chunk off your fingernail. Do you run to the fingernail parlor and ask for a filling? No, you don't. You let it regrow. Now, let's say your nails are in terrible condition, they won't regrow. Well, it's obvious that must be either you're dipping your fingers in chemicals every day or something, or you haven't got the nutrition to make healthy nails.
mm,
So, why do you need to go to a dentist if you've got a cavity? All you've got to do is follow what you do with your finger, stop putting food and drinks in your mouth for 24 hours or so, and uh, try and give your body all the necessary ingredients to repair. And ju- uh, teeth repairs faster than anything.
mhm,
Your teeth are regrowing after every meal. You're grinding them down, and they're regrowing at a fantastically fast rate.
right,
So, uh, within 24, 48 hours, there's no reason why you can't regrow a cavity. What some advanced dentists do is they might just blow ozone into the cavity to
true,
encourage the natural healing. Um, but people need to understand that we are self-repairing, but doctors are taught that we're not. Doctors are
right.
taught your body goes wrong. Bodies do not go wrong, they adapt to a situation. Good example is blood pressure. So you go to a doctor and they say, you've got high blood pressure. Okay. Um, now, therefore, your body's gone wrong, they say. But I would contend, no, your body's dealing with a situation. It's put the blood pressure up for a reason. Now, it could
Mhm,
be that that person's dehydrated, and that
right,
dehydration's made their blood thicker. Now, to pump it round, make sure it goes through the kidneys properly, maybe the blood pressure goes up. The body wouldn't put your blood pressure up for no reason. But what the doctors do is they say, well, your numbers don't match the average number, therefore your body's gone wrong and it's too high, so we're going to lower it. So let's say you lower blood pressure by 10 points. Well, everything, the blood carries all the nutrients and white blood cells and, it carries everything to make you better. round and lubricates everything, you might say. So if you turn it down 10%, that means that you're a little bit slower than you were, and your brain isn't getting the full nutrients, your eyes aren't getting it. By
Mm.
turning you down, how can that be good? What possible benefit could, I mean, are you going to explode if you don't? Well, there probably is evidence to show that continued high blood pressure for a long time means that somebody's going to die. But maybe that's the reason they have the high blood pressure anyway. It's like
Right.
a warning sign. So, in most cases, I believe that they're turning it down, like trying to turn the cholesterol levels down. It doesn't matter how much cholesterol you eat, the liver is still perfectly capable, assuming you're eating the somewhat right diet, of converting various other things into cholesterol. The liver doesn't necessarily need external cholesterol to do it. And as you say, if you've got arterial issues, not enough vitamin D, not enough vitamin C, whatever it is, then the liver will make the cholesterol as an internal bandage. So when people say, "Oh, look at all the cholesterol lining your arteries," as you say, it is a bandage. So if I lost my health, I would not go to a doctor because they don't study health. They study disease and chemical drugs and surgery and radiation. If I lost my health, I would go to a health expert.
Right.
People make the mistake right from the start. It's like, uh, you want to know how to build a wardrobe, so you don't go to a carpenter, you go to a butcher. They both got saws, and I mean, it's people have got to just wake up and realize we're self-repairing, and
But people don't want to take accountability, Clive. I think that is a massive struggle with people these days, because that's why people also love germ theory. They love the idea of blaming something outside of themselves that they don't have control over. When you talk about when you talk to people about the whatever's going on at the moment in the world, I don't want to say the word, but when you tell them to, when you ask them, what have you been eating, what have you been doing to actually protect the terrain of your body, they get really angry. They actually get really angry for you, to even suggest that it could be possibly their fault that they feel the way that they do. But this is what the whole medical system is predicated on now.
well, absolutely. And at the end of the day, there are only so many reasons why anybody gets ill, and I mean, physical damage. You get knocked down by a truck in the street. Okay, well, that might give you a few problems. Let's say that hasn't happened. Um, if you're toxically poisoned, you're drinking tap water, you're brushing your teeth in fluoride toothpaste or whatever it is enough, then you can get ill from toxic poisoning.
Mhm.
And there's another type of toxic poisoning, which is the mental type, where somebody told you you're not good enough,
Mm.
something like that, and that's stopping you. But then the third and last reason why you can possibly get ill is nutrient deficiency. So
Mhm.
with the right nutrients, you can usually get the toxins out.
Right.
And so really everything comes down to nutrient deficiency. And so again, that's why I started a small supplement company, because you walk into the health food store and you're overwhelmed.
Right.
And actually the people working in the health food store generally don't know what really is the best and why.
Mhm.
So I tried to simplify it. I figured out what I think is about the best, and uh, try and make it simple. Then what happened about 7 years ago, I was working with UK Column, and the government came and made us take down all our videos
Oh.
because we were doing stuff the government didn't like. And so now I have something called secrethealthclub.com, where I can, behind a club, advertising rules don't count. Behind a club, you can do virtually anything.
Mhm.
So people join my private members club, and it does cost a bit of money to join. But basically, you can tell the truth there. And over the last many years, being a sort of YouTube addict, every time I saw a good video, I thought, that's amazing, that one. So I've collated a sort of small, not too many, so it's overwhelming, but you can look up most, you can look up fibromyalgia, for instance, or thyroid, or whatever it is, and find some videos relating to that, which hopefully will answer the questions, hopefully, articles
Absolutely.
and so on, without having to pussyfoot around. These days I can't put anything on YouTube anymore. Almost
Oh,
all my friends who used to be on YouTube and Google have vanished. You put their name onto Google, gone. Not one reference to these people. They've vanished them. Then you go on to DuckDuckGo, an alternative uh, search engine, and suddenly they exist again.
man,
And
Google is just amazing at suppressing information. And even when you search for who's the best doctor in the world, Google tells you it's Bill Gates.
yes,
Insanity.
the non doctor.
And but it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Clive, today, and I'm so happy that we got to speak. Hopefully we'll do this again because I do want to talk to you a little bit about other doctors like Dr. Robert Morse and fruitarianism. There's just so much to talk about. But thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you, Tiana. It's fantastic. I've enjoyed speaking with you and happy to do it again.
Absolutely. Bye.